You know, when these guys asked me to give a deFrost talk, and I'm going to tell you how much I love these guys in a minute, my first thought is I don't really have anything to talk about, you know. But there is one thing that I've been doing on and off for the last few years, which is working with clients to train their teams to become better at writing briefs, and then actually running workshops collectively between either design firms and the client team or advertising agencies and the client team to collaboratively come up with the briefs or what the tasks is for jobs that are mission critical. And via doing that for the last, on and off for 18 years, but specifically in the sort of last 4, I actually have come up with what I'm going to share with you guys as tips and tools for how to get to better briefs. I don't want this to be a moan fest, you know. Clients never give us the right brief, and there's lots of that, and we can talk about, I am going to touch on some of that, because I think it's an important thing to talk about and get out of the way. But I'm hoping that I can leave you guys with some practical ideas and some practical tools that you can take with you and apply in what you do. The problem is you, right? I saw that on Tumblr a couple of years ago, and I've always saved it because I think all of us, forget business for a second. I'm 43 now, and there's oh, stop, some more Vince. You know, and there comes a point where you reach a certain level of maturity, hopefully, where you suddenly realise that there are various things in your life which you've always blamed other people for, and you've suddenly realised, oh shit, it's me. I'm the common denominator across all those experiences. You know, the mate who in his early 40s, you know, can't be in a relationship for anything more than 2 to 3 years. You suddenly realise, like, dude, you're the common denominator here. This is you. You're doing it to yourself. And like a lot of things that in our personal lives, I'm going to go on a tangent for a reason. My favourite podcast in the world is called Tangentially Speaking. I go on horrendous tangents sometimes. I do come back, all right? And the tangent I was about to go on is, there's another thing I've realised from the personal realm that applies to business, which is the 7 stages of grief. When clients go through a massive change in their business, an organisation will go through the 7 stages of grief. They'll go through anger, they'll go through denial, all this sort of stuff. So sometimes when you're working with a client, it's actually a useful tool to go, like I've worked with Jim Beam through a massive change where their product was taxed and suddenly doubled overnight. I've worked with Woolies. Do we have any Woolies clients in the room tonight? One? Yeah. No. Do we have any IAG clients in the room tonight? NRMA? No. I'm going to talk about both those clients, not in a negative way, but it's just, you know, there's both those clients have gone through situations where their business has fundamentally changed, and the first response of the organisation has been to go, no! Often spend years going, no! So anyway, back to this thing, right? I think a lot of us have worked long enough in this industry to realise that every now and again we get a situation. Actually, let me not launch into that part, okay? I'm going too fast. The next thing I want to go to is this. Men socialise by insulting each other, but they don't really mean it. Women socialise by complimenting each other, and they don't really mean it either, right? Now, I might say some things tonight that insult some people, and I really don't mean it. I don't mean it personally, all right? I hope I don't, but if I do, please, I don't mean it personally. The next people, I actually want to thank Frost. Thank you for inviting me to come and talk. Thank you for farming so much work to me over the last 3 to 4 years. My children, thank you, as does the dining table. But I also want to say, Frost are a wonderful firm. I've worked with Wolf Olins in London. I've worked with Pentagram in New York. I've worked with a host of design companies and branding agencies around the world, and Frost are truly world-class. And I think it's great that we have an independent world-class agency like this in Sydney available for clients. I think they're both from a strategic perspective, which I'm going to get to in a second, whoop, whoop, whoop. And then from a design perspective, the stuff is first class. I also want to thank Catriona, who some of you may or may not know. She's up the back. She's wearing many hats at Frost now, but traditionally has been the head of strategy. Kat is one of the best intuitive brand planners I've ever worked with. When it comes to brand strategy, there comes a time when a creative leap of faith is required, and creative leaps are required. Many strategists can't do that. I was an art director originally, came into advertising originally through trying to be a freelance illustrator, wasn't succeeding at that. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is Kat brings a creativity to strategy that I think is sadly missing in a lot of other pure strategy firms. A lot of strategy firms will kick out stuff that creative people cannot execute. It ends on the McKinsey quadrant, it's in the top right. When is it never in the top right? You know, we're going to move to the top right, it's so boring. And I hate McKinsey. Do we have anyone from McKinsey here? Yes! At operations and supply chain management, they're brilliant. They absolutely suck at branding and marketing. Anyway, I'd like to thank Kat. Kat has again farmed loads of work to me. I've learned so much from working with Kat. Kat also introduced me to the idea of trying to meditate, which she gave a deFrost talk maybe about a year ago about meditation. This is something I've been integrating into my life. Did a 10-day Vipassana retreat recently, which was the most brutal experience. Anyone ever done a Tough Mudder? Go and do a 10-day Vipassana retreat. It's about 10 times. You've done that?
No, I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's wonderful, but it's really brutal and it's really confronting. So thank you to Frost, thank you to Vince, and thank you to Catriona. This is what I want to talk about. Moths to a Flame. We all know the story, right? A design firm or an agency does a brilliant piece of work for a client. Some of the ones that come to mind is a lot of my working experience has been in the States, so if I talk about examples you don't know, I kind of apologise. But Goodby Silverstone in San Francisco did an iconic campaign for milk. It was Got Milk, right? It started with a cookie with a bite and then morphed onto the one with the moustache. But they did this amazing campaign, stunningly effective. First bit of work to turn around milk sales in the United States in 30 years of marketing. Crispin Porter did this amazing work for Burger King. You may remember Subservient Chicken right in the beginning of the internet. Does anyone remember Subservient Chicken in like sort of 97 maybe? When the internet was just, doesn't matter. It was really successful. And what happens is, all these other clients, they see this beautiful bright flame, right? This wonderful piece of work. They go, oh, I want some of that. You know, I want some of that. I don't really like my marketing. I don't like the ads we do. It's kind of a bit shit, right? And they flock to whatever the hot shop is, right? And then a year later, their work is still crap, right? And they go, oh, it's weird. We hired the hottest shop in the land. And then somewhere over there'll be another shop that's doing some great work. And they go, oh, go over here, right? And then a year later, the work is really shit, right? Because they haven't got to the awareness that they're the common denominator across the experience, okay? Not to beat up on Woolies, but Woolies have been doing this around Sydney. They fired M&C, who are arguably one of the better ad agencies in the city. They went to Droga 5, which, because of its New York reputation at the time, was the hot shop. Got shit work out of Droga 5. Went to Leo Burnett. Got shit work out of Leo Burnett. And I do believe that organisation has now got to the point where they've realised they're the common denominator, and some big changes are taking place inside Woolies. I mean, major, major changes. And I don't say that to beat up on them. I'm just say it to... that it's not just an American phenomenon, we see it here. When Telstra, I love some people at Telstra, but when Telstra went to the Monkeys can do incredible work. And Telstra got really, really mediocre work out of the Monkeys. You're like, the problem is you, right? So that's what I want to talk about. And I don't want to talk about it to beat up on clients, because I want to arm both you guys with some ideas for how you can get better briefs out of clients, and if you are clients, some things you can do to write better briefs. So 5 things. Who's a marketer? Who's agency side? Who's agency side? Designer or advertising, right? Okay, who's client side? Okay. We can all apply these tools anyway.
On the front row too.
Yeah. These are primarily what I want from clients, selfishly, but these are things that we can all apply, right? First of all, clients have to stop assuming that any monkey can do marketing, right? It is an assumption and it's a perception within big corporates that this is true, particularly big corporates, not so much little startups, but big corporates. I won't name names, but there are 2 firms I know in Australia who, how do I say this right? I've never given this talk before, in case that wasn't obvious. In Australia, we don't really have many non-commodified categories. And what I mean by that is a category that is at maturity. We have financial services, which is one of the oldest categories in the world. We've been doing banking and insurance and all this stuff for hundreds and hundreds of years. We have mining, we have professional services. We don't really have a tech sector. So most of the categories we have are categories where there's nothing really different between you and your competitors. And I'm going to talk about differentiation in a second. In that situation, marketing becomes one of the key levers you have for trying to become distinctive and drive business growth. That means you need people who know exactly what they're doing and are experts at it. There are some very big corporates here at various times because the CEO is like, oh, anyone can do marketing, it's just kind of for monkeys. They've put in as the head of marketing somebody who's never marketed anything in their life, right? Sometimes this has coincided, right, with new low-cost competitors coming in, and you've seen them change campaign after campaign, logo to this, to this, to that, and within 5 years, whatever price premium their brand commanded is completely eroded. They're often getting their lunch eaten by the competitors, and they can't understand that it's because they haven't been doing some of the basics of marketing that actually work, but you actually have to know what you're doing, right? So I think marketing requires it's got a huge internal sales problem inside most big corporates. It's failed to sell its value up the chain. Partly it's because we've all overpromised what it can do, right? Marketing and advertising is a very weak force. It's not a very powerful force. People have gone in and overpromised what it can do. So we need to stop thinking that anybody can do marketing and realise that it is a specialised skill. The other thing I want is please give a shit about what you do, right? It's amazing the number of people, not in brand design, right? Because most people get into brand design are passionate about graphic design, passionate about this sort of stuff. But somewhat in the ad agencies and certainly client side, you get people that just kind of ended up there. You know what I mean? No 7-year-old goes, I want to become an assistant brand manager. You know what I mean? It's somewhere, and I'll be honest, I ended up in advertising, right? I never dreamed of being, or marketing. I never dreamed of being, a brand strategist. I mean, who even knows what that is? I remember I was a junior art director and got given a brief and I was like, who writes these? And someone was like, it's the planner. I'm like, what's a planner? And so it is an industry where a lot of us end up, right? But if you do end up here, for God's sakes, be intellectually curious. Give a shit, right? I'll talk to clients who maybe did some marketing courses at university 20 years ago and they haven't read a thing since, right? They have no intellectual curiosity for what they do. So please, because the world changes, we learn things. There's lots of stuff we now know that we didn't even know 5 years ago, right? Specifically that book, right? These are 4 books that I would love everybody in this industry to have read. I'm going to have my email address at the end. You can email me if you want. I can share all this stuff with you. But this book, particularly How Brands Grow, is critical for designers and critical for anyone working in marketing comms. It's the first attempt to derive evidence-based laws of marketing. Has massive implications for people doing brand design as well. 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. It's fantastic. Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. One of the best books I've ever read. And then this is a wonderful book. It's called The Halo Effect. And it basically debunks I often go on about how faddish the marketing world is. Like 1 minute it's engagement strategies and the next minute it's viral this and the next minute it's that. This is attempting to put real evidence, but that also points out how even within management tools and schools, there's lots of stuff that we think works that doesn't. And it's useful for you guys to know so that when you get given that stuff, you don't have to then turn around to the clients and be a dick and be like, well, that doesn't work. I've read the Halo Effect, it doesn't work, right? But at least you can know in the back of your head, oh God, I'm dealing with some bullshit and I'm gonna have to manage this process accordingly. So please give a shit. Please be intellectually curious. If you're not, go and do something else, really. Manage up the chain. Oh, I meant to ask this, but it's too late. We've gotten going, we'll just keep going. Whenever I run workshops around briefs, right, and we say, what's the hardest brief you've ever worked on? It's always where the stakeholders weren't aligned, right? It's always, and I worked on a particular corporate recently where we I helped an agency win the business based on strategy. We went through 12 campaigns, 12 full campaigns until we sold one because no one was managing up through the organisation. So it would just get up to the CEO who would give it to him and say, no, I don't like it, right? Go again, go again, go again. if you don't have all your stakeholders on board with what you're doing and all the core components of the brief that I'm going to walk through in a little bit, what you end up doing is you end up wasting an extraordinary amount of money, right? Because you will use the briefing and the creative development process to figure out what the fuck it was you wanted to do in the first place. And the head hours that you'll burn, and you'll burn your agencies out anyway, they'll end up hating you, and ends up just costing you way more money. So make sure you know, and please manage up to, if you're in a big corporates, please manage up to the CEO on big important briefs. For God's sakes, why is a major brand campaign? Again, back to the point that we're in commodified categories. The CEO should be the chief marketing officer. I hate talking about Apple because it's so naff, but Steve Jobs used to brief the agencies, right? That's how much he realised that was important. There's so many CEOs who go, oh, this marketing, I don't deal with that, it's for monkeys, right? But you've got to somehow find the ways to engage those people, whether it's through workshop processes or whatever. So manage up the chain. And can we please stop talking about differentiation? The word differentiation took off in the 90s. There were a couple of books. Again, it's a faddish thing, right? There were a couple of books written about it. And everyone's like, oh, well, how are we differentiated versus our competition? And I'm sure we've all worked on briefs where you present some stuff back and the client will say, well, why couldn't our competitors say that? And the honest answer, 99% of the time, is they could, right? Because almost no category is truly different. Almost no one is truly differentiated, right? Apple is not differentiated versus Samsung. It's distinctive. Coke is not differentiated versus Pepsi. They're the same product, right? But it's distinctive. That book talks brilliantly. It has a chapter in it which talks about the difference between differentiation and distinctiveness, right? What we're trying to do is build brands with distinctive brand assets, colours, mnemonics, fonts, looks, whether it's Rhonda or the Amy girl at the end, these assets that we consistently apply over time to build a blink test of who we are, what is our core offer, and what visually and perceptually makes us slightly different to our competitor. But the reality is, in Australia particularly, we almost have no differentiated companies. So can we please stop talking about it? And if you ever give feedback to creative people and the answer is, well, what would stop my competitor saying that? You better have a damn good reason for why you're truly different to your competitor, right, than anyone else. Because truly differentiated companies are differentiated for about 2 years before the competition catches up. So I would just love to stop talking about it. One of the best quotes ever. Do you all read that? Complicated seems clever to stupid people, right? It's by Dave Trott. Dave Trott's an old school ad man, but probably one of the best brand strategists and thinkers you've ever come across. He's on Twitter. He has books called Creative Mistress. Ooh, Creative Mistress. Freudian slip. Creative Mischief and Predatory Thinking and various books. He writes wonderful blogs, but he points out how we use... The point I'm trying to make here is keep it simple, right? Please keep things simple. Simple strategy works because people can understand it, they can all pick it up and they can execute it. Probably the best thing from a keep it simple perspective I've been involved with since coming back on the edges is actually something that Kelly knows, is Canadian Club. Canadian Club was turned from a stodgy Canadian whiskey in this country into a beer analogue, a beer competitor. It's been the fastest growing alcohol trademark in the country now for about 5 years. The strategy is extraordinarily simple. We're going to knock off a beer, right? Because we've identified that a bunch of people are kind of bored with beer, but they don't know what else to drink. And it's almost mind-numbingly simple on paper. And what I'm getting at is because we attach the word strategy, I hate being called a strategist, right? You know, one of the best articles, tangent, right? One of the best articles ever was from this FT columnist in 1993 where he said the best way to understand the word strategy is as a synonym for expensive. Right? I've got some strategic consultants, right? Or this is a strategic acquisition, or so because we do strategy, we feel like we have to fill everything up with these ridiculous concepts and baffle clients with stuff they don't know. And often clients are just like, oh, okay, sign the check, and then when it doesn't work, you get shot. So keep it simple. If you can't explain it to an average person, it's probably a shit strategy, right? So please just try and keep things. That's the fifth thing. Please keep it simple. Don't baffle me. Don't talk to me about all the other nonsense. So 8 things. We don't have tons of clients here, so I won't labour these points too much. But these are the 8 things that if I can get from a client or work through workshop processes to get, whether it's brand design, comms or whatever, we can do really great work, all right? Some of this you're going to be like, I know this, right? Some of it may be new. We have to know the business goal, right? What is the business goal? Not what's the comms goal, not what's the brand goal, what's the business goal? What is the business outcome we're trying to affect here? And we need to know why. Why does that goal need to be reached? They've done lots of studies in the military to show that when Marines are sent out on a mission, if they know why they're doing the mission, I can say, go over there and kill Vince, right? If I tell them why they need to kill Vince, the odds of them completing the mission go through the roof, right? So don't just tell me what the business goal is, and make sure it's a real business goal, not just a silly one. I want hard numbers. I need to get subscribers from 12,000 to 24,000. That sort of stuff. I know this seems obvious, but I can't tell you how many times you get briefs where there's no real business goal on there, right? So they don't know why they're doing what they're doing, right? And again, you're wasting money. So what's the business goal and why? The next thing here is for us to do great branding or great comms or whatever, I need to know what your business strategy is, right? Because brand strategy enables business strategy. So as creative people working on your business, if I don't know what your business strategy for reaching your goal is, right, then I'm not going to get there. Or we're not going to do as good work as we could if we know. So this is the Procter & Gamble approach to summarising business strategy. If you want to get a business strategy across the line at Procter & Gamble, you've got to put it into this simple formula. A 1 or 2 sentence answer to where are we going to play, and a 1 or 2 sentence answer to how are we going to win. And if you can't synthesise, again, simple strategy. If you can't synthesise your strategy, your business strategy into that concise a formula, you don't get greenlit, you have to go back and start again. I'll give you an example of one of these. One locally, City of Sydney Council, right? City of Sydney Council's goal, its business strategy, is they are playing at they are not competing with other councils. Sydney's not even competing with Melbourne or Brisbane. It's competing with other cities, particularly with an Asia Pac and the Asia Pacific. That's its competitive set. So we were playing at the city-state level, if you like. If you think about before there were nation-states, there were big city-states. So we're competing with San Francisco, Singapore, all this sort of stuff. So that's where we're going to play, and we're going to win. The strategy for success is to become one of the most green, global and connected cities on the planet by 2020, right? And then they've got all these work streams that come out of that, but that's their business strategy. When Procter & Gamble went into China, right? Most Western companies, consumer goods companies, failed in China. Failed. After many fits and starts, Procter's one was, we're going to play at the bottom end of the market, right, with everyday mum and pop Chinese people who really want Tide, want all this stuff. But what they figured out through much failure was they can't afford it, right? Can't afford a bottle of it. So how they're going to win is put everything in single-serve sachets. Right, so every Procter & Gamble household product in China is sold in single-serve sachets. Again, it sounds brainlessly simple. It took them years to get there, but they're caning it. Disaster environmentally. The single-serve, no, I'm serious, the plastic, the throwaway plastic is I mean, it's a morally reprehensible strategy in one way, but then again, you know, what you going to do? I mean, all that stuff's so beyond me. Okay, the next really, really critical thing to know, and I almost never see this on client input briefs, is, again, not to do with comms, but when it comes to your business strategy, is what is the key obstacle you're going to face, right, in trying to get there. So you've told me what your goal is, you've told me what your business strategy for getting there is, but between today and there's going to be a lot of obstacles that you're going to have to overcome, and I want to know what's the biggest one, right? I picked this up from Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. There's a quote in Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, which is written by a guy who ran rocket programs for NASA and all sorts of stuff, like real strategy, not just like, what's our brand strategy for Kit Kat? You know, like people died if it didn't work, you know. Has this thing where most strategy fails because it fails to honestly and accurately diagnose the obstacles you'll face, right? So you say, oh, strategy, you hit an obstacle and the whole organisation freaks out. It's like, oh, no, shit, don't know what to do, right? Because no one's thought about what's the obstacle you're going to face. The reason that knowing what the key obstacle is sometimes... Am I making sense? Am I... okay, fine. Am I talking too fast? No. Sometimes, particularly in commodified's actually a found it's not a word, commoditised categories, quite often you turn your marketing, your branding and your comms at the key obstacle. So for example, for NRMA, right? The key obstacle for NRMA is people are going, why are you so expensive? Why? Right? They've got all these business goals, but the key obstacle is this price perception. So they're in the process of turning all the marketing is to justify the premium, right? It's a pretty standard strategy, right? But sometimes when you know what your key obstacle is, this is a world that we can help with. Sometimes clients come back and say, the key obstacle is our supply chain is fucked. And you're like, well, sorry, we can't help. You know what I mean? There's no advertising campaign or branding or logo that can help with that. Oh, actually reminds me, we, Kat and Vince and I did a little bit of work for a woman who was having problems with a yoga studio, right? Her key obstacle was her yoga studio was in a shit place. A new logo, whatever, it wasn't going to help. You know what I mean? So sometimes so it helps us figure out whether we can really help and how we can help. And mostly in this country, where we are dealing with commoditised categories, you want to point your marketing and your branding at the key obstacle. So what's your key obstacle? Because otherwise I'm going to develop strategies that are going to just fall apart the minute we hit it, particularly in comms. Why? Why do you exist? Purpose. It is the new black in marketing. Purpose is the new black. Has everybody must have seen the Simon Sinek TED Talk, Begin With Why? No? Go to TED, second most watched TED Talk, worth watching. Has kind of overtaken marketing in the last few years. And I'm going to bring it up for a reason, is that it is really helpful to know why a client exists. What's it in the world to achieve? What's its purpose? What's its mission? Right? And we do really need to know it because sometimes it helps us come up with ideas, particularly with brand, right? Not so much with advertising. So it's really important for you to either work with clients or if you work in client side to know what in the world is this thing here to achieve. And do watch that talk. I want to touch base on it though because it's all started to go a little bit far. And I'll give you some examples. Probably the best example is Australia is when ING Direct changed their tagline from it's your money to spend your life well, right? There's a trend in marketing at the moment, which is a terrible trend, which is to elevate your purpose into your marketing. Now, brand purpose rallies your staff, it gets them out of bed, it gets them to come to work. We're all about helping people spend their life well. But when it gets to consumer marketing, no one had any idea what it means, and it's not even a consumer benefit, right? So you'll see it like Dove, arguably, is doing mission escalation, campaign for real beauty. It's like, it's got nothing to do with the product, nothing to do with what makes me smell better, washes me better, anything. You know, and for a long time that campaign didn't really turn around sales for a variety of reasons. So we do need to know your purpose. Just watch it though when it comes particularly to advertising, normally purpose-led advertising. Most punters are like, I have no fucking idea what that's about. I love watching telly with my wife, right? Because she doesn't work in this industry at all. And every now and then it'll come along, you know, and she'll go, and just her reaction is like, I have no idea what... I know, because I'm all too close to the industry, you know what I mean? But watch telly with, you know, people who don't work in the industry. But this is what I love. It comes from this great agency called We Are Sell, who, in the UK, and they've just been recently, along with a bunch of us on Twitter, taking shots at mission escalation, purpose in your tagline. It says, ego, look at us, this is our vision, this is our purpose. At brand, we believe. We'll tell you how to live your life, we'll tell you what you're doing wrong, we'll tell you what's wrong with society. We are a brand and we are not afraid to overestimate our importance. Sausages. I don't know, for some reason the sausages totally, I lost it at that. They also wrote a great letter about 5 or 6 years ago they pretended to be just like an average guy writing a letter to advertising. He's like, I don't know where you guys have lost the plot, but I have no interest in like visiting your sausage's website and then putting a video and uploading my video of me eating the sausage and all this sort of stuff. It's very, very, very funny. And it's kind of been proven true. A lot of the social media stuff has turned out to be very faddish and not good at driving business results. Oh, and I want to play this partly because Duncan Trussell is one of my heroes, and also because it captures this point.
The commercials it doesn't tell you what's in it, doesn't tell you what it tastes like, doesn't tell you like what purpose it serves or whatever. It's purely just these abstract messages like live now, or like taste the excitement, or like whatever. I don't even know what Coke's current
no, but it is these kind of it's these kind of like fashionable sort of like simple ideas that anyone with like today's your day.
Yeah, right.
Like, what the fuck is
it? Is the now always love. They use love a lot.
Oh yeah,
that's so shameful.
That's what I'm talking about. All those taglines that we in the industry we get. It is the now, But punters are like, oh. I got to tell you a little story too. I was working on a project with an agency out of New York, trying to develop a global campaign for a spirits brand, and the creative director was just totally doing my head in, and I'd shared this audio clip because it's on my blog. I love it. It is the now always. I'd shared that with a bunch of the other creative people working on it, and then as a joke, I pitched "It is the now" as the tagline to the creative director. He was like, fucking love it, man. It's totally it. We're all like, no, it's a joke. But the problem is that there's, we all fall in love with this nonsense. But, Jim Beam, it is the now. What the fuck does that mean? Okay. The next thing that's really useful to get from clients or to work with clients or to try and figure out is what is the customer revelation? And we've got to stop using the word insight, right? I'm sure you've worked on stuff. Well, what's the insight, right? Normally insights aren't insights, right? There's like, all women need tampons. Or whatever, you know what I mean? Completely generic. Whatever it is, kids love Lego, or kids love to play. That's the customer insight. I'm stealing this word of revelation from a great guy with a blog. He's called Ad Literate. His name's Richard, can't remember. But basically he said, an insight should make you think about something in a completely new way, right? That's the difference between an insight and a revelation, right? But insight gets used so often that it's just not a useful word anymore. If you've got a customer revelation, then I want to hear it. If you don't worry about it. Again, we're in commodified categories. It doesn't really matter, right? So if you've got a revelation, put it there. If it's just a generic blanket statement that's a truism, don't even bother with it. Don't even bother sharing it with me. I think I'll give you an example of a revelation. Again, these sound so simple and inane, right? But when Goodby realised on that first Got Milk campaign that you only miss milk when you're eating a food that complements it, right? And so the first campaign was a cookie with a bite got milk, a brownie with a bite got milk, right? No one had ever thought about that before, and it completely changed the way they marketed milk. That was a revelation. It's like, fuck, you only missed this then. If they've been trying to sell it on protein and calcium and this and that for years and years and years. So that was a classic revelation. Okay, this is one of my favourite little tools, right? It's called proposition bubbles. The other thing you've got to work with clients, or if you're a client, is to get this is my format for making sure you don't write bullshit props. A proposition, right, is an answer to why should I buy this one, right? Why should I vote for this one? Why should I visit this one? Whatever it is, why should I watch this one? Whatever it is you're trying to get the punter to do, it's a simple, plain English answer to that question. As a baby planner, I was guilty of writing props like, why should I buy this one? It is the now. Right? No, I'm serious, I used to. And then thankfully, I had the shit kicked out of me enough, particularly by one creative who was trained by Dave Trott, right? And Dave Trott's from East London, and this guy was from East London. He's from the Isle of Dogs. I gave him this brief. He threw it across the table, and he was like, "It's not a fucking proposition." It's like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "A proposition's a simple answer to the question, why should I buy this one?" And I was like, "Oh my God, you're right." Because I think visually, I came up with this little bubble cartoon thing to make sure that every time I work on a brief, right, whether it's a brand brief, because again, brands aren't in a vacuum, right? We develop brand identities to sell. The very first brand was the Bass Triangle. The Bass Ale Triangle is the very first recorded brand. It's all about helping people identify the product on shelf or out in the world or whatever to sell. So whatever we're working on, it's really great to know what is your answer to why should I buy this one? And that's got to be what you'd say to a real person at a barbecue, right? So recently with NRMA, you don't see it reflected in the work for a variety of reasons. But why should I pay more for NRMA? Safer pair of hands, right? And they've got all this evidence for why they're a safer pair of hands than any other insurance company. They're doing a shit job of telling you why. That's their own internal problem. But again, clients get the work they deserve. It's the most horrible thing. I hate that phrase, but over 18 years, it's really true. Great clients get great work. Mediocre clients get mediocre work, and shit clients get shit work. So feel free to steal this. If you email me, I'll email you this template. The first thing is to figure out what's the question. The question we'll ask is half answered, so think about what the answer to that is, and then you've got to get a plain English response to that. Don't worry about making it sexy. Don't worry if it seems so simple. You're like, "Oh, it seems so simple. I'm not justifying my existence or my salary. I just can't write Whitens and Brightons, can I?" But yes, you can. And then let the creative people pick that up and run and turn that into something distinctive and beautiful, right? Almost the simpler you can be here, the better work you're going to get. This other one, and I'm happy to share these little squiggles with you, or you can do them yourself, sometimes I call this positioning bubble, or sometimes I call it an experience bubble. The strongest brands in the world pretty much have a one-word association in people's minds, or a very short association. Until Coke disastrously have started ruining their brand by trying to own the idea of happiness. For about 80 years, Coke owned refreshing. Thought Coke, refreshing, right? So when people thought, I'm a bit thirsty, I'll have a Coke, right? Hope and happiness. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But so very, very simple answers to that. The reason why this is really useful, particularly when we're working with web-based environments and store design and experience design, is if you know what is the one word that I want to leave in a punter's head after they've experienced my shop, my call centre, my whatever it is, right? My advertising, my collateral. It's really useful to know what that word is, because then I can start to build the experience around what you want to have left. Whether it's not just comms, it can be everything from the way I lay out the store and all of that. So again, this is a really useful work exercise to run with clients. At the end of the day, what's the one word, what's the one phrase we want to own in punters' minds? And this comes from that great book that was their 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. Rees and Trout, they also wrote a fantastic book called Positioning. These books are 30, 40 years old, and people sometimes go, well, it's so old, it can't be work. But actually, most of the old stuff is the best stuff. The stuff by Bill Bernbach from the 60s is as true today as it was back then. David Ogilvy on advertising is as true today as it was back then. Most of the new stuff you'll read will be faddish and will be proven to have not stood the test of time. Tone of voice. Simon Vexner has a fantastic blog called Scamp Blog. Again, I can share all of this with you. He had a blog post a while ago. He's a great creative. He's currently the creative director of on Telstra at DDB. He's done some stunning work for VW back in the UK. And I've had the pleasure of actually getting to meet Simon. I knew him via his blog. I was a fan of his blog long before I met him. I worked with him on a couple of projects. He wrote a blog post about where creatives commonly get lost and how to help them find their way. And it's all about tone of voice. I won't labour the point. Suffice to say that I'm happy to share it with you, but he basically makes a very strong argument for tone of voice. It's one of those areas we get to at the end of the brief. It's always at the end. You're like, oh, oh, tone of voice. Oh, friendly, approachable, professional, and you just sort of come up with a grab bag of stuff, you chuck it out, and it actually is, again, back to commoditization. When basically we're all the same, tone of voice becomes one of the key ways that we become distinctive, right? One of the key ways of being not differentiated, but a little bit different to your competitors is how do you talk? How do you interact with people, and what's that like? He's got a very useful analogy, which is when you're lost, 3 points, you can triangulate and find out where you are. So 3 very well-chosen adjectives, really thought about, that a writer can write to, and that people can write call centre scripts and all that stuff that needs to be done to. That 3 very well-chosen adjectives, and they must be the same on every brief. I've worked on huge corporates where tone of voice is different from brief to brief to brief to brief to brief to brief to brief. Tone of voice needs to be agreed once with the central marketing function and then just never change. And so that's just the best tool for tone of voice. And then my secret weapon, right? This is Dave Trott. This is the wonderful Dave Trott, who I'd love to meet. And I'll happily share this with you too. This is a little screenshot from a hand-typed, it's pre-internet, pre-digital, typed on a hand typewriter, I think, or maybe that looks like a printer. Anyway, so it's very old. It's called the binary brief, all right? It's a really fantastic tool. Don't worry, I'm going to read it to you. Don't worry, you don't have to squint. The binary brief is asks you to answer a couple of really pertinent questions. They're business-related questions, and if you know the answer to them, you're going to get your creatives closer to the scoring line. Again, this is a tool that you can run with clients. You can get them to do a binary briefing workshop. You send it to them the day before, you get them to read it, you get them all in the room and say, right, what's our answer to these questions? The questions are, how are we going to grow, right? Are we going to steal share, or are we growing the pie? Clients are always going to say, well, it's a bit of both, right? But this is a thought exercise. It's a binary exercise. You have to get them to choose one or the other, right? Because those are the only 2 ways to grow. You grow the pie or you steal share. That's the only 2 ways to grow. So, and if I'm stealing share, I'm going to do a very, very different kind of brand design and a very, very different comms than if I'm trying to grow the pie, right? All this stuff leads you in fundamentally different ways. With whom is the next one, right? Are we going to get people who currently use this category, or are we going to bring in newbies, right? This is all explained very, very well in the binary brief. I'll share it with you. The next one is, why should they buy us? Is there something about our product that they get a product benefit from, or we've got a brand story? Product-led marketing, this is now we're getting out of the brand world, but product-led advertising tends to work way better than brand, right? Apple doesn't do brand advertising, it does product advertising. So we fall back on brand when we are truly at the end of the product life cycle, like Coke, like Pepsi. There's nothing left to talk about. There's no innovation left in the category. So we go to brand story, right? It's also why innovation is all the rage with corporates at the moment, because they realise that they've got to start to have some product difference, right? Something to talk about. And then how should we be remembered? A logical argument or a brand mnemonic? I won't labour this point. I'm happy to share it with you all. He's got fantastic quotes in it. But this is, I almost don't want to share it because it's been, but enough people know it. Again, this was given to me by that East London creative who beat me over the head for being a dickhead or a wanker planner. And a really, really great tool. So, my sales pitch. I think this is the picture from the Bad News Bears. Anyone know the Bad News Bears, that Walter Matthau film? Dating myself. It's a fantastic film. You should definitely see it. From 1976. So my sales pitch, right, to you, where you can use someone like me, right, is in 2 areas. And I don't think we've got too many clients here anyway, but if you need your teams trained as to how to write better briefs, that's something I've been doing at Combank, Aussie Mortgages, bunch of places. So it can definitely work with teams to help them get to better, to train them through all these tools so that they come to you with better briefs. And the other thing is, the thing I've touched on, is when you've got a mission critical brief where you can't afford for all the stakeholders to get unruly and run off like cats and trying to herd cats, is I often do processes for clients where we go, right, everyone in a room, here's your homework, everyone in a room, we're not leaving, it's a 3-hour, very structured process where we crunch through all of this and arrive at the brief with all the right stakeholders in the room. So that's that. Here is my email address. tom@tomdonald.net. If you want any of this stuff, right, I'll give you links. I'll put together a little package with the link to Simon Sinek, a link to Simon Wexner, Dave Trott's binary brief, and a couple of other things. And it's all the stuff that was in here. I'm happy to share. None of this I've invented. This is just my toolkit that I've kind of cobbled together over 18 years. If I'd invented it, I'd be terrified of giving away IP, but none of it's mine. It's all stolen anyway. So I'm happy to share. So that's me. Thank you. Thank you again.